Welcome to the Stranger Conversations podcast, where we explore the lives and lessons of those around us, hidden in plain sight. I'm your host, Tay Jones. Hello and welcome to the Stranger Conversations podcast, or more specifically, welcome back to the show. After a little bit of a hiatus, the conversations have now returned, and today we have another great one. But before we get to all that, I want to put out a casting call. If you'd like to be the next guest on the podcast, head on over to strangerconversationspodcast.com. You're going to find a link to the show's calendar. All you have to do is find a date and a time that works for you, sign up, and I'll be in touch. It really is that easy. If this is something maybe not for yourself, but you happen to know someone who would be a great guest on the show, be sure to forward them this podcast and encourage them to sign up. Each episode belongs to the guest. You're welcome to talk about or promote anything that you'd like to on the show. All I ask is that you're willing to be interviewed about your life and that you're not afraid to share. It's not always that easy to do so, but that's what makes for an interesting conversation that other people can learn from. And really my goal is that we can all learn something and get stronger together. All right, on to today's guest. In this episode, I talk with Nate Cox. Nate is a dual U.S.-Australian citizen. He's a world traveler and culinary extraordinaire. Nate has a lot of stories to tell, from his experience with a life-threatening car accident, a Peruvian jungle jaguar attack, Brazilian cartel gangstas, the loss of his business, and more. As a reminder, all past and future episodes of the Stranger Conversation podcast are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as my website. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the conversation. Be sure to follow me on social media at Real Tay Jones on most platforms. All links are available in the show notes. All right, without further ado, here's my conversation with Nate Cox.
Mr. Jones.
Nate, how you doing, man?
Good, buddy.
Good.
Yeah, man. Just excited for the best podcast that ever happened all time ever, Like what else can I say?
That's right. I love it. And I actually wasn't expecting you to have an accent, so that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Definitely of the Australian variety.
That's great.
And migrated to the United States in 2010.
Okay.
My mother was a American citizen, and sort of like her side of the family migrated to the US in the sort of 70s, and then and then sort of I've migrated back the other way, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Yeah. It's been 15 years, it's okay.
Yeah.
It was quite actually. It's funny that you say that. I remember distinctly entering the United States on my fresh American passport that I'd received from the consulate. When I obtained my dual citizenship.
Yeah.
And I remember flying into LA, and the customs officer did a bit of a double take because I just think because the passport was brand new or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of looks at me, looks at the passport, looks at me again, says, "Welcome back, sir." I was like, "Hell yeah, buddy!"
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nate Cox, welcome to the show here. So I know it's a little bit different than some podcasts. Usually I have guests on as somebody that everybody kind of knows about and talk to them. But, this is a little bit different. This is just me getting to know somebody at Hopefully.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's a good format, and the Friendly Gecko is like a guy that sort of like put together gecko therapy or something like that. He sort of put together a little sort of something along these lines, but
Okay.
yeah, but he sort of really marketed as like, I'm your therapy gecko,
Oh,
and
okay.
so like so he wears like the green gecko suit and all that stuff, and then like people just call in and they like talk about their problems or whatever, and he just sort of like helps them out.
Okay.
It's just like a little bit of a chamber of confidence for people just to ring up and be like, oh, this is happening in my life, so
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely
yeah, it's
not
kind of fun.
qualified to be anybody's therapist, that's for sure. Yeah, but but yeah, man. And actually, I was just looking at it because in one of the emails you had said you said like, "Oh, hey, mate, I should have put that together. That maybe you were Australian or New
All
Zealand or
right,
something." Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Well, really, when people sign up for the show, there's a little bit of a piece there that you can fill out. Hey, is there anything that you want to talk about specifically? And you would just put, hey, just a conversation platform. So that's what we're here for.
Right.
You would also put down just a couple little things about yourself. Sounds like you spent a lot of time in the hospitality industry, and it looks like you're quite the world traveler. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that too. Um,
Cool.
cool, man.
Yeah. Well, I guess the story of my culinary career is something that, I kind of fell into in some ways. I was outside of 12th grade, living on the east coast of Australia there. And
Okay.
the nearest, like Sydney being sort of like the satellite city from where I grew up, which was about an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
And I started like, I got to the point, I ended 12th grade and, time to make some money, time to get a job basically. And I had designs potentially for, tertiary education, but, like I said, I just kind of just was looking for cash in an immediate sort of situation, 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied for a kitchen hand role. And when I arrived, I went up to the dish area and started like scrubbing these trays and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
this was like this was a wholesale pastry outlet called Casa del Gato El Dolce, and
Okay.
these Portuguese crew, and they were awesome, like really amazing people. Never forget them, and
Mm-hmm.
so there I was at the dish pit. And then Danny, one of the co-owners, walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, Nate, I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Hey, look, we got a dishwasher, and he's like, you're going to be our like kitchen hand, and I was like, "Oh, okay," so, I go in there, and then she just starts training me on like making batches of cookie dough. It was all Italian, obviously,
Yeah.
by the name. We did wholesale gelato manufacturing, which was pretty tech, which I quite enjoyed, and then, yeah, so I just sort of like stumbled into that. And after 3 months, the boss sat me down and said, "Hey, like, I don't know." He's like, "I don't know what you're doing, what your designs are, but he's like, I think you got a lot of talent." And he's like, I worked at Harrods, England, and he's like, I can, I can just show you what I know and see if you like it, and we can move forward with an apprenticeship. And I was like, "Hey man, yeah, I'm wide open. Let's go." I was having fun. I was enjoying the kitchen environment, the brigade, the camaraderie. It sort of was like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't really thinking past that.
Yeah. That's one
Uh,
thing I never did. I've never worked in like food service, really, being a server or anything,
right.
but it always looks like it'd be a hell of a lot of fun working out in the kitchen. You know, just
Yeah.
it seems like its own little world back there. The front of the house and the back of the house are two different places.
Yeah, totally. But they have to work in harmony for it to be a good show.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was sort of like the beginning, and as I sort of progressed, after 2 years, I started to seek, the sort of upper echelons of the scene. I went from that place to working at the Stanford Plaza in Double Bay. and I was the apprentice pastry chef there underneath 3 other full-time pastry chefs.
Okay.
And that in itself was a very unique situation, given that at the time, the wholesale manufacturing organizations that I'd previously worked for had begun to infiltrate the hotel industry. And what I mean by that is that instead of employing chefs and having them make things from scratch, hotels started buying wholesale bulk and then just sort of like just flashing in the oven. And that sort of like reduced their labor costs significantly. Made the work itself like just dummy work, and kind of eroded that sort of really 5-star hotel kind of environment, it kind of slipped from there, So, fortunately, I was the beneficiary of a hotel that was like, no, we're maintaining this standard. And it was really cool. We did big bar mitzvah, like functions and all various things. Elton John would stay there regularly, and we had all kinds of guys. Bill Clinton stayed there while he was president, and we had Secret Service in the hallways and all that kind of thing. That was pretty funny, and yeah, I know. It's like you always think you were laughing amongst the guys, like, oh, just walk past one of those guys and then just give him like a fast twitch kind of thing and see how he reacts.
Yeah, probably a bad idea.
No, we're not going to do that.
That's funny.
Yeah. But
and when you say pastry chef, I mean, I picture that. I don't know much about the different roles in a kitchen like that. But a pastry chef, I mean, you're just like baking, making desserts, that type of stuff. Mostly baking.
Yep. So, pastry chef encompasses chocolatiering. Encompasses a la carte dessert cuisine. It encompasses sugar blowing and decoration. It encompasses cake making, cake decorating, bread baking, cookies, muffins. The sort of the basics. But my designs weren't to own and operate a bakery. I enjoyed the restaurant environment, and I enjoyed doing high end a la carte, desserts. That was my place in the industry,
Yeah.
So that was great. Finished my apprenticeship, moved to Melbourne, Australia, and then spent 4 years down there, and just a beautiful city. Sort of really fell in love with that city. Not that I didn't love Sydney or whatever, but I mean, I think Melbourne had that a little bit more of an essence of culture than Sydney, which was a little bit more business, finance centric.
Okay.
Sort of flashy lifestyle, beach bodies, but better climate, and then Melbourne is sort of like the the dance art galleries and shows and music, and like that's very, very Melbourne,
So it's kind of like Miami to New York City, something like that.
Something akin to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, LA to San Fran, or yep, exactly. So so really, really great. And then I started to get, I guess you can say, a little stale. I was just searching for something, and I moved to Canberra with a girl. We'd been dating for about 2 years, and we agreed to move to her parents' house, like in the middle of nowhere in Canberra, to attempt to, create a bit of a nest egg for ourselves and try to push forward in life. We were experiencing some relationship difficulties, and it was sort of playing out like in front of her parents and starting to get a little wild, And it was a Friday afternoon. I'm driving home from work. It was a 40-minute drive from work to my girlfriend's parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh,
And I had an extremely, life-threatening car accident.
wow.
The car flipped up onto its side, and I went roof first into a tree at about 45 miles an hour.
Damn.
And I got like crushed into the cabin. And the car sort of like bananaed, around the tree and stuff. And a couple of minutes later, I guess I survived because my seat broke on the impact. I took a big hit on the top of the head. I've got, a pretty large scar to prove that. C1, C2, C6, C7 vertebrae were broken. All my ribs were crushed. My clavicle was smashed. Some other associated injuries as well. So I had this guy like pull me out of the car through the back window onto the ground. And I was fully aware of my injuries. I think your body really tells you in those times what's going on. I sort of used my left arm. My right arm was trash, and I used my left arm, and I kind of felt the area in my head, and I got to sort of feel my skull with my own fingers, which is like it's a sensation that I'll never forget, and then I laid on the road for about 20 minutes because we were in quite a remote area before the ambulance arrived. The gentleman held my hand the entire time, sat with me. I severed an arterial vein, so I was bleeding pretty heavily. I remember looking to the side and seeing like a halo of my own blood like around my own head, and then I looked up at the trees, and I remember having like a very distinct thought about the beauty of like life and that tree and how amazing it looked to me in that moment, because it just, I don't know, the irony or just,
Yeah.
And,
I mean, did you have a feeling that you were going to die there on the road?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You kind of thought that was it.
Yep. I was like, yeah, this is how I go for sure. Yeah. And then I think, unfortunately, I think it was like 20 minutes where my mental state was actually really good, and then when I started to experience the sensation of shock, was when my psychology in the situation changed a little bit. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa, shit! My body's freaking out. I'm gonna die.
So at first it was more of a feeling that, okay, this is it, and it was almost like it was, you were okay with it. Maybe not okay, but you were kind of expecting it. And then so the panic came later. I would almost think, that would go the opposite way. That at first you'd panic, and then you would start to just kind of accept.
Yeah, and exactly. But I was very calm at the beginning.
Hey, well, the body does amazing things. Maybe it could have just been saying, hey, it's not over yet, and then putting you in that fight mode.
You got this, bro. You got this. Exactly. Yeah. And so, and then the ambulance guys arrived. 2 giant morphine needles in the legs, and and then I was absolutely gravy. I was loving life. We had a good rapport established. And he did all his checks, and and he's like, what's, he asks me, and I'm like, my neck's fucked. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And he's like, okay, so boom, and then. So they had to do the all stretcher maneuver and all that stuff, and then he just for mental cognizance sort of question, he's like, so who's the current prime minister, of Australia? And I was like, it was somebody who I had a bit of a distaste for, and and he's like, and I was like, well, Johnny fucking Howard, that's who, and he's like, oh, you're going to be just fine.
Oh, that's good.
And I was like, yeah, man, I'll get there, So, off to hospital. And I mean, I did 4 weeks in hospital. I was in the neuro ward initially for like 2 weeks, and then they sort of like bounced me down to like sort of early rehab situation, and then I got bounced out like 2 weeks later. The neuro ward was definitely an experience. Some of the people that I was surrounded by, like, had some like pretty bad head injuries and stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I developed a personal relationship with the ex-convict named Steve next to me,
Great. Yeah.
who was quite the character. And he had a propensity to call for his ex-wife. It was just a thing that he seemed to be stuck on,
Okay. Like
and
because of his head injury.
because of his head
Yeah.
injury, yeah. And
Interesting.
so this is like day 4 in the hospital, and it's not that easy to sleep in hospital. There's a lot of noise, a lot of things happening around you all the time. So catching sleep is like a pretty nice thing. So
Yeah.
it's midnight. I'm laying there. I feel my body relax like all the way. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, when you get that almost like that dropping sensation, like,
Yeah.
where you're like, boom, just before sleep. So I'm fully aware of that. And I'm just like, oh, here we go. Fuck. And then Steve screams at the top of his lungs, like his wife's name, fucking Janet. He's like, Janet! And I was like, oh! And I was so surprised and shocked in the moment that my whole body just, clenched, and obviously every broken bone and thing that was happening in my body just went on fire,
Man.
like this extreme pain. And I was just like, oh my God, Steve. And I turned over to him and I said, Steve, I was like, I'm going to be real straight with you, bro. I was like, if you do that again, he's like, I'm going to get up out of my bed and I'm going to put a pillow over your face, mate. You know what I mean? And he's like, whoa, bloke. He's like, I'm sorry, and I'm like, it's okay, Steve, but I mean, first and final warning.
That's right. Don't do that again.
And then from then on, he referred to me as bloke, like for the next 4 or 5 days that I was next to him.
That's
so
right. You got in his
it
good
was
graces.
quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you when all this was happening? When you got in your accident?
I was 28.
Okay, so you're a little bit older,
Yeah.
but still young enough, for something traumatic
Very
like
fair.
that to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
did that change, your outlook on life? I mean, you're kind of, your late 20s. Did that kind of steer you in another direction or anything, or make you kind of realize what's important in your life?
I mean,
Or are you just happy to be alive?
I had perspective.
Yeah.
If there's one, there's no giant revelation. You know what I mean? There's just survival. And I mean, and I survived, and then I was given a different set of circumstances for a period of time. I had a pretty much like a full 9-month rehabilitation process.
Yeah. Wow.
And I wholeheartedly embrace that. And really, if that's what I have to say about it is that perspective of losing your health and like having your health like taken away, and then having the perspective of your health returning. I think definitely shaped some of the motivations and decisions of my future existence for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. One day, thinking it's over, feeling your skull with your own fingertips, staring at a tree, and then kind of getting a second chance to put it all back together. It's pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah. So, and obviously, I think that sort of culminated into my adventure to join the yachting industry, travel the world, get to be a chef, and do all that at the same time. And
Like a chef on a yacht?
yeah, chef on a super yacht. Yeah.
Really?
So yeah, and then I like cook for billionaires and all that stuff. Super fun, and be part of this little micro family on a boat, which
Yeah.
was just a great time, you know. And yeah, I mean, I would say my first 4 to 5 years in that industry were some of the best times of my life, for sure.
That sounds amazing.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah, yeah,
So
really,
it's
really
you,
cool.
and you threw out the word super yacht. What makes a super yacht? What size ship are we talking about?
Uh, Usually, if you use the term super yacht, you're probably going like over 150 feet.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's
hmm
that's not a bad gig.
Yeah, so they're kind of like it's like the floating hotel, you know. It's got the
Yeah.
jacuzzi, it's got the bars, it's got the disco, it's got it's got the whole thing. The cool thing about the boats is it's a 12 guest sort of maximum.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of uh, there's some commercial legislation that sort of dictates that
Oh, okay.
versus amount of safety protocols and equipment that you need on the vessel and stuff like that. And so once you like cross like a certain threshold of tonnage and number of guests, then you move into like much more strict commercial
Gotcha.
regulation. So the sort of private yachts, sometimes you see, and you're like, oh my God, look at that boat. It's like
Yeah.
250 feet. And I mean, but it's still 12 guests,
Yeah. And is this something that
Yeah.
was like
So,
leased out with different people, just, or was
yeah.
this
So
someone like
the
famous or?
owners, the owners have the option. So like
Okay.
you buy, if you're a boat owner, you can choose to charter it or like lease it, as you say, but the correct terminology in the yachting industry is charter.
Charter. Okay.
Yeah. And then, but there are private owners that don't want anybody else on their private yacht. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. That'd be me. Not
but
not that I'll own a super
yeah,
yacht probably, but if I ever
yeah,
do.
right. And ideally, if you do a few charters a year, and you're a boat owner, then you're essentially just sort of offsetting some of your
Yeah.
expenditures. Like boats aren't cheap. I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah. And
So
when
yeah, I mean,
when you're working on a boat like that, are you just hustling, or do you actually get to enjoy what you're doing and like the where you
I mean,
go?
that's the amazing thing about that industry is like you do get downtime. Like,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, like obviously different programs like have different levels of like intensity, but typically, like, a busy boat will do like 20 weeks of guest trips like
Hmm.
per year
Okay.
with guests and like owner and charter clients. And I mean that like a 20-week program, that's a very busy program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are some owners that use their boat 4 weeks of the year, and the rest of the time the crew just get paid, and get
Hey,
to be where they are, and whatever it is. So
not bad.
yeah. So there's some honey holes in that industry that like are beyond like ridiculous kind of how good your job can be and how good your lifestyle can be
Right.
combined. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah. And you had said that you
But
traveled. Oh, go
everything
ahead.
runs its course.
Yeah.
Sorry, everything runs its course, and as you get older, and then all the young crew coming into the industry, and oh yeah, what boats have you worked on, bro? And,
Yeah.
you start to evolve away from it, like, and you want to have your own home because every time you're on a boat, I mean, you got a cabin, you know what I mean? And it's like, after 5-6 years in the industry, I definitely started to feel like that. Like, man, I need my own pad on land. I got to, I need this separation, like,
Yeah.
so that sort of, those feelings start to emanate, I think, for everybody that spends time in that industry for sure.
Yeah. And just to go back when you were talking about
Yeah.
your accident, you had said that you were living with a girl at the parents' house. Did that all fizzle away after the accident then?
Yeah, unfortunately it did. Uh,
So she
she
wasn't
helped
part of
me
your
through
life
my
while you were traveling the world then.
she helped me through my rehabilitation process and stuff, and she signed up at university to continue her education, and my dreams were elsewhere, and
Yeah.
that's sort of how that relationship ended.
Yeah. Hey, that happens. You had also written, when you wrote me an email, you said that you traveled to 65 countries. That is extremely impressive. Was that mostly on the super yachts?
Uh, um, I Yes and no. Probably like 60% was super yacht related, and then the other was just desire to travel and explore and see places.
Yeah.
South America. I'd spent quite a bit of time down there, and had some pretty interesting experiences down there. But I definitely can say though, I think as I crossed into like my mid-30s, holidaying in third world countries like really lost its sparkle for me.
Yeah.
It just and I don't know. I guess everybody's different, but like I feel self-conscious when I'm surrounded by poverty and like I'm this like peacock white male like walking around, and I started to feel that and sense that a lot, and I was just like I don't feel comfortable doing this. Like
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, my tourist dollars put food on their table. I mean, so there's obviously a positive exchange there, but I mean, it just kind of just like I said, it just kind of feels weird, as you get a bit older. And the holidays, nowadays are more like, which nice hotel can we go and stay at for 5 days and sit by the pool?
Yep.
I ain't fucking sitting on a 14-hour bus ride into the, Manu National Park and,
Yeah.
working at the animal rehabilitation sanctuary in the jungle. And, that's like a whole story. That's a whole story too. We should get into.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So me and my buddy Harry were, yeah, that's exactly what we did. We were in this, like, we did this sort of little animal rehab kind of vibe thing. Just what do they call it? Woofing or, that kind of charity work that you do around the world. And my friend, he stupidly got too close to one of the jaguars and it swiped him on the head. And,
Really?
yeah, and he got cut open pretty bad. Like, it was like a proper gash. And we were a pretty significant distance from any kind of emergency or medical assistance. So we just sort of like wrapped up his head, and then we had to hitchhike out of where we were. So like the guys are like, yeah, just walk like a couple of miles up to this road and then just, hang out there like a couple of hours, you'll get someone, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right.
Crazy.
So we go out there, and then we're chilling on the side of the road. And then like this green truck like sort of comes our way, looks military, and what me and Harry were like, oh, fucking sweet, like, like these guys will get us, to town, and so fucking these guys stop and they see we needed help, and they were friendly, and they were like, yeah, pile in, and like, all right. So we get in the back of this truck, and there was like good like 500 bricks of cocaine in the back of it, and yeah, and like, and there's
what country are you in?
We're in Peru.
Peru, okay.
Yeah, and those guys were like crossing out of Brazil or whatever, and just going north, and just all jungle stuff. They're just cooking it in the jungles.
So it's just no big deal. They got all that in the car, and they just stop and pick up hitchhikers, huh? Just another day in Peru.
Yeah, another day as a cartel gangster, bro.
That's right, man.
So they pick us up. My buddy Harry's like, obviously he's in a bit of pain and all that, and this obviously like leader dude, just fucking drives this big survival knife into one of the bricks.
No shit.
Smashes it up and then like puts it in front of my buddy, and he's like, here for the pain. Oh my god. I'm sitting there just like staring at this scenario, like, holy fuck, a cartel gangster just put a survival knife of coke in front of my friend's nose, and he just did it. And I'm just like, oh my god,
That's amazing. You're like, we don't have to pay for this shit, do we?
yeah. I was like, oh man, if we don't die like today, like it will be a good day.
Yeah. Well, you know, honestly, that's a good sign. If he's sharing the coke, he's probably not going to kill you. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty funny, you know, how that all played out. And then and so I really enjoyed Colombia, though. I really found the Colombian people to be really amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a few cultures around the world that seem to be like synonymous with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Brazil, Colombia, Australia, there's something, I don't know, especially Brazilians. Like Australia, I think when Brazilians and Australians get together somewhere around the world, it's like, it's a good time, you know? So,
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's
Because I've kind of found that, you know, Canadians are much more aligned with people from the UK than they are with Americans, which is, you know,
Totally.
kind of odd. I mean, not really, because it's kind of part of the UK, but the fact that we're
they are a Commonwealth nation.
and we're, you know, the proximity of the US and Canada, you think we would be more aligned and more similar, but it's
Right.
really not. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, hopefully Trump just makes a mistake, you know what I mean? And oh man, we're back in the political circus. I'm loving it.
Yeah,
it's quite funny, you know. I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know. I grew up in a very liberal household, and I don't like to use the word liberal. I like to just say, like, you know, whatever, left, whatever, you know. And I mean, but I mean, it was a good. I loved it, and they were totally align with my values at that time. I mean, this is going back, you know, 30 to 40 years, you know, and like, you know, I really feel like in Australia, like the Labor Party was the party that everybody voted for. You know what I mean? It was just like the Liberal Party, funnily enough, which is the term in Australia for the Conservative Party, was the party that was like the fringe party. You know what I mean? That, you know, didn't often get into power and, you know, that kind of thing, you know, and, you know, and then, I think we've had this pretty distinct sort of evolution of, you know, the political spectrum, and some of it's been associated with a foreign influence and, you know, all the kind of stuff that's happening in the world that we experience today. You know, but I do feel like the Democratic Party just lost its soul, you know, and I mean, they kept clinging on to the next, you know, woke agenda. I hate to say it, you know what I mean? But and they lost themselves as a party, you know. And I spent last winter in LA, and I was deeply saddened by the psychological environment that had been created there by people's fear of not being woke enough.
Yeah.
You know, like in a way, like it became like a melting pot of insanity, you know. And I would go to like open mics. I'd like to do a little stand up here and there and stuff, you know, nice. For some fun. Yeah, just a bit of kicks, you know. Yeah. And you know, there was like parameters for like the jokes that people were telling, and
like, you know, comedians. The club would put parameters on it.
Yeah, and comedians were like checking each other, like, oh, you can't say that, bro. Like, fucking, you know, and like
comedy is like the last bastion of hope for all of that. Like that was the place. That was the place that you could say whatever you want and offend everyone, and it was just funny, and then you leave as friends.
Just go and watch 10 episodes of Kill Tony and realign your fucking brain for like what comedy needs to be.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and so, you know, so I'm experiencing all this. I'm just like, oh my god, you know, and. Yeah, just one comedian after the other trying to outdo each other with like a crappy school shooter joke, and I was just like, oh my god, guys, like comedy's dead in LA. You know what I mean? And so,
well, a lot of, I mean, Joe Rogan talks about that too. You know, I mean, they like a lot of the comedians, they've moved over to Austin because of that. Yeah,
the Mothership, the Kill Tony show, like it's just that's where it's at now. You know, and very, very. I think, a very poignant statement that was made about the culture shift that occurred between, I think, between the left and the right. And this is a very interesting moment in time, and it's it's a funny one, but it was the Will Smith slap.
Oh yeah.
The Will Smith slap, was, and Jim Carrey actually just sort of phrased it as like, he's like, that was the moment that like the Democrats weren't in the cool gang anymore. Like, yeah. He's just like that. He's like that. What just happened there was just bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. He's just like, that was a comedian telling a joke. And then you got this guy who's just like warped out of his mind. You know what I mean? And then there's this fake outrage that's occurred and and it's just all these symptoms of like, the culture shift that happened and people's, trying to, outdo each other with how not, I don't know, not nice, but just, I don't know, I can't phrase it, but you understand what I'm saying,
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's turned upside down. 20 years ago, hippies were, the liberals and against war and all of this stuff. And then now all of a sudden they're begging for more government. They're begging for more wars. And it's just weird, like completely 180 shift. And
what happened?
And all these people that have, traditionally have, always, been with the Democratic Party, and they're just, outspoken, just being like, what is going on? Like, they don't even recognize it anymore. Now they do fall more in line with the conservative party, but it's strange.
And I mean, I'm going to say there's absolutely nothing conservative about Trump's 2024 like platform. You know what I mean? Like, it is so far away from conservative. It's not funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, the advent of crypto and all this stuff, like, he's all for it. I mean, he freed Ross Ulbricht. He freed, you know what I mean? Like, this stuff that's going on, which is just like, I think progressive. You know what I mean? It's not.
Yeah.
And
everything's different.
So he's repealing these, diversity, inclusion policies and all that kind of stuff. And as much as like, okay, the pendulum has to swing one way and then it swings back the other and then it sort of lands somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? But I think it was Jordan Peterson that I think made a extremely good point about those policies and how they affect the people that they're trying to help in the workplace. Because now if you were hired based on the color of your skin or your history, whatever it is, like because you're a diversity hire, then you have instantly been labeled. And isn't that what we're trying to move away from?
Yeah. Meritocracy,
That's exactly, but I mean, I'm talking about like giving people labels in the sense of like, you're another race. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and the DEI policy creates that. Like, it's like, oh, you're different to me.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? And it's like, that's not what we're trying to achieve, right? Like, isn't diversity about everyone just kind of being like, no, actually, we're all the same. Like, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like, we're all just humans. Like,
absolutely.
Okay, color of skin doesn't mean shit, right?
Yeah, sadly, I mean, in America, we all of a sudden, there's a flag for everything, where the beauty of America is that flag has always represented everyone. That's the point of it, or that's what it's supposed to represent, so just such a weird thing. It's I mean, it's not like we didn't commit apartheid in the United States. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, okay, South Africa has got their own problems right now and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But it's just I honestly feel like it was a net negative for what they were actually trying to achieve. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I'm all for multiculturalism and racism doesn't really have a place in society, but we all have our own personal biases based on our own appearance versus somebody else's appearance. You know what I mean? Like, that's just who we are. And a symptom of the environment that we grow up in. Like, my idea of beauty is not
you know, a 5'3" Asian girl, like that's not my idea of beauty. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and that doesn't make me a racist
Yeah, how
person.
dare
It just
you?
just makes me fucking white, dude. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's what I am, and therefore that's what you know. That when I look at somebody's face or whatever, it's like, you know, like I'm appealed by what I recognize. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's pretty base level stuff. You know what I mean?
Have you traveled much lately, or have you kind of been U.S. based for a while now? I'm just curious, you know, if you go
I
out
was in
there.
Italy. I was in Italy in the summer,
Okay.
and I will say, I absolutely loved the feeling of the people there, like, and the stark contrast with America. And I think, like, just when you're in those little tourist villages and beautiful areas, I mean, it feels so much more alive. Like, people are talking to each other, people are interacting. It's like the piazzas are like full of people. Everyone's just hanging out. It's like, yeah, we're on the streets. It's summer. Like, fucking yeah, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, unfortunately, America has this real, like, go back to your house, close your door. It's 5:30 p.m. Don't
Yeah,
leave it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, fucking whoa, you know, and you know, it's kind of yeah. I will say that was really starkly evident to me, like how people just sort of all got along in Italy, where it was kind of cool. Everyone's just chilling, everyone's vibing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then I like I get off the plane in the United States, and I just feel this like iciness, like between people, and no one's looking at each other, no one's interacting, everyone's
Yeah.
just like really like fucking, you know, lone wolf, you know. And it's like I didn't like that. You know, it's honestly, it's something that I really recognized in my
Yeah.
recent travels for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'd love to go to Italy. I've never been there, but yeah, always wanted to go. And
Beautiful country,
I
man. The coastline's amazing. The Amalfi coastline,
that'd be
like,
great.
it's one of the most beautiful places you can see, you know. And they grow like lemons on the cliffs, and the Amalfi lemon is like regarded as like the best lemon on earth. And
Really?
it's got this really fat like pith, you know, and just being grown like next to the ocean. There's something going on, you know,
Yeah.
the salt and lemon, you know, it's like a whole thing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like San Remo, so beautiful, like the city of flowers, and obviously Rome to, you know, witness the Colosseum and,
That'd be
you know,
great.
things like that. Despite the fact that that's, you know, just like tourist bucket list stuff, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, dude. It's freaking amazing to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like,
can't imagine standing
to
next to that.
walk those
Yeah.
steps and yeah, be in the Colosseum and just be like, wow, what a piece of history is like this is, you know, and
For sure.
seeing the Vatican and, you know, seeing, you know, walking on the cobblestone paths that are 700 years old and
Yeah.
looking up at a gargoyle hanging over the road, and just,
Yep.
man, like
You know,
really, really, really cool stuff, you
totally
know?
different world, and that's I've always kind of said that, you know, even though I haven't traveled over to Europe, but you know, it's, you know, when you live over here, I mean, you just kind of know what you know, and then, you know, but there's literally people in Europe that are living in houses that are older than the United States. You know what I mean? That's just
Yeah, man.
they're
I
just
mean, and
that's
their family's been living in them for 500 years.
yeah, it's
Like,
crazy. You know,
like,
just
like a lineage, bro, like of humans.
yeah,
Like,
the
what?
architecture and the history, and you know, and it's over here it's so new, you know,
Yeah.
comparatively. So
There's a fascinating novel that you should read. It's it's a gentleman called Montaigne, and he wrote a series of introspective philosophical sort of pieces
oh, I
called
love it.
essays,
Yeah.
that is super relevant to this day. Like, I mean, just very, 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 very insightful human being, you know?
I've heard of one of these. Somebody
Yeah,
gave it as a suggestion one time. I don't remember which one it was,
right.
but yeah.
So the book itself is called How to Live, or A Life of Montaigne. So it's a biographical piece that is intertwined with the philosophies of his essays.
Okay.
And so each chapter is defined by one of his essay pieces, and then it relates back to the experiences of his life. And so I can't remember the specific name of the chapter, but the philosophy itself is just to sort of always be welcoming to people, and you know what I mean, like that's sort of like the way that he would live, you know.
Yeah.
And
It's a great way to live.
and so during the Crusades, or the I'm not sorry, maybe Crusades is the wrong terminology. The war between the Protestants and Catholics.
Oh, okay.
I guess say French Revolution. You know, very bloody, very nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like just killing each other brutally. You know, and then they had so Montaigne, the family, owns a vineyard which still exists to this day called Chateau Yquem, and Chateau Yquem is regarded as one of the best Sauternes wines that you can consume. And it's like a sweet wine. It's like a after dinner wine, you know, and it's absolutely beautiful. Like, yeah, if you ever have the opportunity to drink it, it's fantastic, you know.
Great.
And so during the revolution, he had a situation where a bunch of raiders like came to his vineyard with the intention to sack the castle, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
and as they came up the road, you know, him and his butler and whatever other on-site staff, whatever, like just swung open the doors and welcomed them in and said, "Yes, come on in." And they put out some food and some wine and made them sit down, and then they all sat there and shared a meal. And the head of the bandits was like, "You know, we came here to sack you, but we're not going to do it."
You convinced us. You're my best friend.
Yeah. So you know, that ended up being one of the formative, like, you know, parts of his essays based on, you know, how he diffused that situation, you know.
Yeah.
And so there's many like pieces like that within the book that are very, very poignant and fun to read.
Yeah, that's good. I'll have to pick that up. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of like classic novels and stuff lately, and trying to get through some of them. And I had sent like a request, like, "Oh, anybody have suggestions?" And somebody had mentioned that name. I know I've seen it before. So
right, and you know, I will say as well about Europe too is there is a lot of bad blood between different countries too. You know, everybody sort of hates each other a little bit. You know,
there's a lot of history. You know, a lot of history there with your neighbors.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and that's something that sort of the American experience it's not really part of the American experience. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like we're just like this standalone kind of country, and you know, it's kind of funny like that.
Yeah, I mean, America, you know, you split up. You will see some different cultures and everything, but everybody kind of you know, sees themselves as American. So I mean, you can just travel freely. Right. You don't have, you know, you can just do whatever you want. I could drive across the country tomorrow if I wanted, and you know, drive a hell of a lot longer than you could drive in a lot of places. So yeah, you can experience a lot in one place without even needing a passport. You know.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I've written down another question for you. I think that I was going to ask, but I think you said you were a dual citizen, right, with the United States?
That's correct.
Yeah. How does that work exactly when you're a dual citizen of Australia and the U.S.? I mean, or really any country. I mean, is it literally just free reign on both countries?
Yep.
Do you have to do anything specific, or is it just?
Well, when I came to America, I guess I had the option to obtain a social security number and all that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't have to go that far with my American citizenship. I probably could have just maintained a passport and had no other ties to the United States and remained by and large an Australian citizen. You know what I mean? But you know, by doing that and by paying tax to the American government and all that kind of thing, when I retire, I'm actually going to be the beneficiary of 2 Social Security payments.
Oh, look at that.
Australia.
Man, you planned that out.
That was the best advice that my grandmother gave me.
That's great.
She did the same thing. She was
Yeah.
like raised in the US and then moved to Oz, and then she was like getting her American Social Security checks and then getting some retirement money
Yeah.
from the Oz government too. And so, nice little retirement.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you don't have to pay. You're living here and working. You're not obligated any like tax money to Australia, are you? Or do you have to pay something?
No, if you're
Okay.
180 days, if you're 180 days a year outside of Australia, then
Okay.
you're not tax liable.
Okay. And then there is no like compulsory military service in Australia, right? It's all volunteer.
Or volunteer.
Okay, because I have heard that before. I actually went to high school with a guy, and I don't know, his mom was like Italian, and I get apparently you have to spend like 2 years in the military in Italy, and however it was, but he was a dual citizen, and then like he turned whatever 18 or whatever the age was, and they were like, all right, it's time to do your military time in Italy, and he's like, what are you talking about? So he had to figure that out. So I thought, man, that could be a nightmare. A nice little surprise for you if that wasn't part of your plans.
Yeah, I used to roll with a couple of Israelis in Australia that sort of were like that too, and
Yeah.
they were Australian citizens, but they had to go back and do their compulsory service. So
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Well, I mean, what else you been up to? What do you do for work right now? I mean, are you a chef? Are you still
okay, so
stick with the cooking?
yeah,
Or?
recent times have been some really great opportunity. I think almost like I guess you can say turning my life around sort of level, like opportunity stuff, and when I say that, I guess I should give a little bit of backstory there. Like 6 years ago, I had, I guess, or probably it was actually 8 years ago now. I had a friend from the yachting industry that I was in Austin, Texas with. Not a girlfriend or whatever. She worked on yachts. And we were acquaintances, friends, and she had an idea for a business, and I really liked the idea. We joined forces, and we went for this kind of thing. The idea itself was a phone application called Shop Crop, and we aggregated the local farming and ranching communities onto a direct consumer sales platform.
Okay.
In essence, a great idea, and I mean at the time it was definitely a new space, and and I invested a pretty big wedge, you know what I mean? I put 90 grand down, and she put a significant amount of money down too, and we went ahead and tried to do this, and then there was a point, and unfortunately it was pretty early on, where this guy got in the mix who she was acquainted with. I didn't know him. He ended up being of pretty bad character. And it led to, some challenges in the business and stuff, and then unfortunately, sort of double down again, was she got diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
And subsequently died. And during the time, in the worst of her ailments, this gentleman was taking money from her, and so legit, just like a scammer, you know what I mean? A fucking really bad human being, and so, unfortunately for him, I got the opportunity to take matters into my own hands a little bit, and that, so that was a bit of justice, but, I left Texas pretty soon after.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's starting to feel a bit hot water down here, so why don't I go north? But, that's life, and so that was it was pretty devastating. I had to go through this legal battle to get the company, and, and I had to liaise with the deceased party members, deceased company members' family who I hadn't really known that well. And we were having to deal with like some pretty heavy stuff, like, fiscal, like, discovery of like this money that this guy had taken from us and all this. Like, it was really dark, you know what I mean? Super dark stuff, and which one of the cool things is like I am very good friends with them, like, to this day, which is really nice, So, but I managed to eventually like launch the company, and I launched it in Bend, Oregon, and I did it all of my own volition, and I think some of the public perception was that like I was some rich tech dude who like coming into town and trying to fuck with people, or, you know what I mean? And like it was simply not the case, you know what I mean? I'd literally just put my nuts on the line for this idea, and really my friend's idea. You know what I mean? And like, and I just believed in her and us so much that I was like, fuck yeah, we'll do this,
Yeah.
So I launched the company. I got like, my partner and I, now my partner Katie, she was really integral in helping me to come out of like, the awful state I was in, and to push this company forward and to get it to market. And I'll always be so appreciative of her for that, for her belief in me. And that was a beautiful thing, because most people just do their own thing in life. You know what I mean? Like, and to join forces with somebody and to achieve something together is like, you always ask yourself, how do these people get so rich? Like, what is it? You know what I mean? It's like, bro, they don't fucking do it alone, mate. You know what I mean? It's like they have a team of humans that believe in them, and that's really like the key to the lock. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's it,
Yeah.
Plus, obviously, like intelligence, skill, engineering, knowledge of science, blah blah blah. But I mean, so we go through that. I launched the company, and I'm trying super hard to just sort of get, venture capital sort of investment money. And, I was grinding for like a year and a half, like after we got it to market. And COVID happened. Even COVID, I just kind of felt like was maybe even an opportunity. It was like, oh, people can get delivery, boxes of veggies and da-da-da. But I was so close to the end of the line at that point that I couldn't pivot and do it again and da-da-da and change this and change that. I was just like, man, I got to put it to bed. You know what I mean? So I had to, make peace with that. I'm not going to say I even am fully at peace with it, but I think the lessons that I learned were definitely that, like, don't allow your passion for something to cloud your judgment. That's like, that was a big lesson for me, over that situation. And, also the big lesson for me was that I had the courage to do something in life that was bigger than what most people wanted to achieve or wanted to try to do, you know what I mean? Like, and I took a big swing, and I'm super proud of that, and there's nothing, the financial loss or whatever it is like, it pales in significance to, like, the energy and courage that I put towards something. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just I did it. I put so much of myself into it, and I believe now that I'm capable of doing it again. And it's taken some time to find that place within myself. I definitely went through like some sort of like clinical depression for like a year for sure. Like, just, all the darkness, just having thoughts of wanting to blow your brains out and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I mean, that's all super real. I mean, we not all go through it, but I mean, most people these days like experience it on some level,
I mean, everybody goes through hard times, right?
We can. Yeah, and we can talk about mobile phones and how that's messed with people's brains, as we go on in this conversation and stuff. But I mean, so coming back full circle, your question about like, hey, what are you doing now? So I had this amazing opportunity in August to work on a bison ranch in Montana called the Hightail Ranch.
Man, that sounds amazing.
Absolutely, like full-on regenerative bison ranch. Super, like just I loved every minute of being there. And the owners, John and Brittany, are like some of the best people that I've ever met and worked for. And they sort of built this restaurant on site as an extension of like, hey, we've got the ranch. Okay, how do we progress the business model kind of thing,
Yeah.
And so they built some cabins and they built a restaurant, and they were trying to do some, like guest stays and stuff, and they were having some challenges with their business model. And I had this, super extensive background in hospitality in the private sector, and connections with wealthy people and all that kind of thing. And it just ended up being this amazing like culmination of like their need and what I can offer. And we're moving ahead for 2025 with a really exciting business model. And I just really feel like this is the turning point or validation that really I just needed to keep putting one foot in front of the other. To say, like,
yeah. I mean, you
damn,
got to
all
take
right,
risks.
this is great.
Yeah, you got to take risks in life, and figure out what's
Right.
what's for you, and learn lessons along the way. And so, are you in Montana right now?
No, I'm currently in Bend.
Okay.
So I've come back for the ranch sort of shuts down in the winter. The Montana weather's not too pleasant.
Man, Montana's beautiful though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I mean that topography out there on the ranch and stuff, like I've never seen anything like it. The big rolling, undulating hills, and it's just gorgeous. And it's funnily enough, you start to tap into a little bit of history whenever you go to a new place and stuff, and the whole area that where we're at in Montana, along with some of Eastern Washington and Oregon, was all a giant body of water called the Missoula Sea.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And so that sort of all drained away and left us sort of with the topography that we experience today. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's really beautiful out there.
Where in Montana?
It's in an area called Camas Prairie, which is like it's about an hour away from Missoula, and also like an hour away from Kalispell, like sort of in between both satellite cities.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful country. I've spent a lot of time up there, so.
Yeah. So yeah, the fly fishing and all that good stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's gorgeous, and the bison are very, very sort of majestic animal too. The more time you sort of spend around, and the more you just sort of like, you're just like, man, you guys are like awesome beasts, and they are they're native to the United States. They are a native animal here. And during the times of colonialism, the bison were eradicated to 541 head.
That's crazy.
And it was actually a couple of Montana ranchers that got together and were like, got to save the species, and they did. So, without those Montana ranchers, we probably wouldn't have any bison in the United States at all. Yeah.
And so, are you going to be going up there full time then, or at least maybe not in the winter time?
It's kind of like a 6-month contract. It's like a 180-day sort of contract. You know what I mean? And it just works really, really well for the both of us. So it's perfect kind of setup.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sounds like you found your next best thing there.
Yeah, dude, it's great. It really is. And I mean, it's sort of back to sort of my cooking fundamentals, and But, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's fun, and as you know, move on in life and get older and stuff, you sort of lean into what you're good at and what and that sort of, you know, it's kind of just life sort of gets dictated that way, in some ways, So like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'd love to be a rocket scientist, but I mean, that's an 8-year learning curve at university and blah, blah. So,
Yeah, I know.
I got
As
got to be
I've
realistic about, my next week's pay,
Yep, for sure. And especially too, as you kind of get older, that I found, you really start to figure out what's important, and
Yeah.
what you're going to put up with. My new rule is pretty much I just do things that interest me. If it sounds interesting, I'm going to do it until it's
Right.
not interesting anymore. And
Right.
I mean, life's short, man. You gotta keep yourself busy, but you gotta also like feed your mind and feed your soul a little bit too. So
Totally. Like, yeah. And I mean, I really think the advent of technology has been such a like double-edged sword when it
oh
comes to this
man.
stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it is such a double-edged sword because you have this creative space within technology that is like super fun, like like the whole like 3D movies and pixel, there and there's like. I mean, it's limitless, like how cool and artistic you can be within like tech space, but
Right.
but at the same time, like it's also like people just aren't doing it. Like it's just everybody's watching other people do it. Like
Hmm.
it's now we're the attention economy is the economy, and there's the people that feed it, and there's the people that just absorb it. And I mean, it's like it's imbalanced now, and people's screen times have taken over their existences,
Yep.
and our brains have been completely hijacked by our mobile phones to the point that I mean, we now have rehabilitation facilities in the United States where people do like tech detoxes, and because their brains are just literally fucked. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's a disaster.
Yep.
And I mean, so you know, it was, I guess, comforting to see some accountability with some of those guys. They got in front of Congress and they
Hmm.
apologized and blah blah. But I mean, in the end, like nothing changed. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah. There was the
and
good old days. Like, man, I kind of wish we had flip phones again. And that was,
oh, man,
that was one thing that I regret because like our kids, I mean, they're a little bit older now, but you know, when when devices really came out and video games, I mean, it wasn't like they weren't online with other kids. It's like you put a disc in and you played a video game, or your phone,
yeah,
your phone did like barely anything, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. Oh, take this, we'll call you.
right,
And then within like a year or two, it was like, oh my gosh, what the hell happened? Like now I wish I wouldn't have given them that, that device early, because it just morphed into something crazy within a very
right.
short amount of time. And now
Very short amount of time.
I feel bad for kids. I mean, obviously you can kind of put a stop to it as a parent, as as best you can, but
No,
a kid born
but,
today, it's just I don't even know what they're I don't even
but
I
here's
don't even know what that's going to
here's a,
look like.
but here's a funny little case story for you. So I got a mate in Texas. He's got two sons.
Mhm.
The son's like 18 now,
Yep.
and and he was like a little Minecraft wizard, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a little Minecraft G. And then some through whatever process, you know, this 18-year-old kid is getting paid 60 grand a year from Minecraft to to mess around with blocks and figure out code errors or
Yeah.
blah blah blah, like all stuff like that. He's just like troubleshooting for Minecraft, and he's an 18-year-old kid getting paid 60 bones. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's kind of like, there's some really positive stories. I mean, and obviously, like, some of these guys that are so young and just getting so much coin it's kind of crazy. The
Yeah.
WhatsApp kid and then stuff like that. It's like, I mean, these guys are young, and you know,
Yeah.
I do question people's level of responsibility with that kind of money at that age. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
just like on top of the world. I
For
mean,
sure.
good
I don't
power
know
to
if
them.
I
You
if
know
I
what I mean?
made
And
if I
this
made 60
is
grand at
America.
18, yeah, I'd probably be in fucking jail.
Right,
I would have thought I was
right. You know what
Gordon
I mean?
Gekko,
Oh
man.
my God. Yeah, like I would have been completely off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be not hitchhiking. I would be the guy in the truck shoving survival knives into bags of cocaine. That's what
Yeah,
I would be. That's what I'd be doing.
right. So I mean, yeah, it's just like, yeah, you know, we as a people, I think the age that I am and the transformation that I've witnessed, being from a little kid to where we are today,
Yeah.
and watching the advent of technological progression like through my life, it's been really insane to witness, and humans, just that seems to be like, I guess, one of the driving forces for the human race is just the pursuit of betterment. Like,
Hmm.
okay, how do we make this look prettier? How do we make it function better? How do we, that is just like a constant pursuit.
Yep.
Within the human race, and I mean, now we're starting. I think we've built this sort of foundation now where we're like, okay, like technology could really be great for people. I mean, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't want to have a $40,000 Tesla bot in my house that does all my laundry, does all my dishes, like just is literally like a slave. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And I just kind of like, oh, I would absolutely love that in my life. You know what I mean? Like just to have a bot that just looked after the house all the time. You never had to worry. Leave some clothing on the ground, it picks it up, puts it away for you. Like just
Yeah.
amazing.
And you
Like
probably think like, oh, that would free me up. I'd do so much, and you'd probably find yourself sitting on the couch watching TV while the
yeah, still
robot did
fucking way
everything.
lazy.
You
Yeah,
just wasted
yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
And every
Right,
every generation I think goes through that. So the
right.
the old timers were telling me, oh, what do these kids come to these days, and now I feel like I'm that guy.
Yeah,
I'm about ready to scream at people and tell them get off my lawn. I'm almost there.
right.
I'm this close to
Yeah,
putting plaid pants on and just being inappropriate or something. I don't know.
I know. It's really sad when you hit that like line. Fuck, man, I don't know when it was. I mean, like definitely like within the last few years, like walking into a nightclub or a bar or something and just kind of being like, like wanting to be part of the cool gang,
Yeah.
but like the 23-year-old kids are just looking at you like, bro, you're an old dude, man. What? You don't, you should, you shouldn't be at this bar. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm like,
You're like, yeah, I
and I'm just like,
shouldn't. You're like,
God
it's too
damn
loud
it.
in
I'm
here
like,
anyway.
really? Yeah. I'm like, really? Am I there? Is this what's happening right now? Like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think also as you get older, you just get better at making your own fun too. Like it's like, when you're younger, you just need that like social outlet. Like, oh, I just got to fucking hang out with the crew,
Yeah.
and then when as you develop, you sort of like you want to have a little bit more like intention with what you're doing, and time. You start to feel like life gets a bit shorter, and no, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to waste a weekend getting pissed at the bar, and
Yeah.
no, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like my value system is very different from my value system as a 21-year-old male.
Yeah. Yeah. FOMO kind of goes away when you get older. It's like, oh, I'm not missing out on anything, man. I'm just gonna do my own thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and like, in someone like me that's like had a pretty rich existence, like, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm pretty happy just to like be like, yeah, man, let's like really insulate it now and create like a bubble where like everything's just happening within it. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. I'm not looking outwards.
Yeah. You got to make it to the end. You know.
Right.
So
Right.
absolutely, man. Well, man, it's been a hell of a good time talking with you. Anything about your life you want to talk about, or anything that I should know about you that I haven't asked you?
I mean, I feel like we covered a really good bit of ground.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that I would love to do, or say, would be let's do it again.
Let's do it, man. I
You
love
know?
it. Yeah.
Let's I'll just be like your monthly tap in guest, bro. You know what I mean? I'll just
There
come
you go.
in. Well, I think that stimulates your heart a little bit too. You know, when you have that oh, Nate's tapping in again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe we can build a little something that way. You know, that'd be fun.
I love it. Yeah, man. Well, I really appreciate you for. Excuse me, I can't even talk. See, I'm too old. This is already past my bedtime. So but I really appreciate you signing up and being willing to come on the show, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Totally, it has. Yeah, man. Let's do it again. I mean, how do you put 43 years of your existence into an hour and a half? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's tough.
Let's do it. Let's do it again.
Yeah, man. Sounds good, bud. Well, thanks again, Nate.
Well, good to tap in, and I look forward to hearing the final product.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'll keep in touch with you, and I'll definitely let you know before it's live, so you kind of know what's going on and when it'll come out and all that stuff. Right on, buddy.
Okay, cool. We'll chat soon.
All right, man. Have a good night.
See you, Tay.
See you, bud. Bye.
See ya.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Cox. I want to thank Nate for coming on the show and having the courage to talk about and share the portions of his life that you just heard. As I said during the intro, it really isn't all that easy being vulnerable with a complete stranger, especially knowing that it's going to be broadcasted publicly for everybody to hear. I really do think, though, that those who have the courage to put themselves out there to help teach, encourage, and motivate others really are a special breed, and I'm proud to have met Nate, and I'm looking forward to talking with my next brave guest. If that is you, head on over to strangerconversationspodcast.com, sign up via the calendar, and I'll be in touch. If this sort of thing really isn't for you, but you happen to know someone who would be a great guest on the show, be sure to forward them the podcast, encourage them to sign up. I would love to speak with them. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the conversations to come. Be sure to follow me on social media at Real Tay Jones on most platforms. All links are available in today's show notes. Thanks for listening. I'm Tay Jones, and we'll chat later.